Hello and welcome to History Pitch. So we have a few technical difficulties that we are facing at the moment, but we're going to press on because the show must go on. I've got today Artemis in the studio with me, and Artemis, what happened in history today?
Today, the Louvre opened actually in 1793.
Oh, I've just realised that your mic hasn't been on, Artemis. That's hilarious.
So are you? Oh,
yeah, yeah. So this was just
hear me
me
now.
Yeah, sorry everybody. That was more about technical issues. It's a weeding in. So it's a weeding in process. But we've just been discussing today in history, and we had said that the Louvre opened to the people in which year?
In 1793.
1793. We had discussed. What did we discuss in terms of American political history?
In 1910, the first Washington state election in which women could vote happened. So that's quite important as we...
1910?
1910.
Yeah, of course, in my country, Australia, women are voting, from the 1890s onwards. Just thought I'd get that in there. Progressive democracies. And what else do you have?
1917, People's Commissars gives authority to Lenin, Trotsky and Stalin.
Uh-huh.
And in 1957, Great Britain performs atmospheric nuclear tests at Christmas Island. That's a jolly good name for nuclear testing, isn't it?
That is a jolly good name for nuclear. Yeah, happy birthday, everyone. So that was today in history. Now, listeners, I thought we'd give you a brief overview of what we're to expect today, aside from more technical difficulties, which will be a given, I think. We have Artemis Ignatidou.
That was great.
Was that good? Ignatidou?
Ignatidou.
Okay. So she is going to be our interviewee. We're going to find out who she thinks she is and who she might be. And we've got Dr. Erika Hanna back again, if I can make the technology work. And Erika and I are talking about Bonfire Night. We also have Simon Prince, Curmudgeonly Simon, who is our devil's advocate. I hope Tavinder will make an appearance at some point. Here she is. Tavinder will make an appearance with her Beer Bobe segment. We'll be finding out how British I am. And I have a very special and exciting appearance from the Itinerant Poetry Librarian. And we'll find out a bit more about her when the time comes. So I'm just going to see now if I can make Erika work. Hang on. Hello, Erika. That wasn't Erika. That was the sustain feed.
For my adoring public.
Yeah, your adoring public. Shout out to adoring public. So, Erika, I've got a bit of a problem in that I am not a native to this land, and I do not understand this bonfire night extravaganza. Have you seen the pictures in The Guardian of the procession in Lewis?
Yeah, that's a bit weird. As a historian, I can give you my certified opinion that that's a bit weird. Tamson, it's not strange that you don't understand Bonfire Night. In fact, your incomprehension of Bonfire Night is the key, is our way into understanding Bonfire Night. Because...
Sorry, my colonial ignorance might unlock the secrets to your history.
I think that's the exact thing. I think it's not just your ignorance, it's everyone's ignorance is what we're dealing with. Because Bonfire Night is a really interesting way into thinking about forgetting as much as remembering, okay? Bonfire Night is what we do, we celebrate Bonfire Night is we're celebrating anti-Catholicism. People burn the Pope on Bonfire Night. Bonfire Night is a nasty, nasty thing.
I mean, it is quite something.
We don't remember.
It is quite something to put effigies of human beings on a bonfire in the 21st century. What are we acting out there? I mean...
Well, I think it's quite a complex process, because what are we acting out? Can I tell you about my bonfire night?
Please, Erika, tell me about your bonfire night.
My bonfire night, I have to say, and I hope the people I was with aren't listening. It wasn't amazing, to be honest. So we thought it'd be really, really fun to go up on the hill above Oxford and look down over all the fireworks going off in the city. And I thought that would give me a chance to wear some chunky knits, look good. So I
maybe some tight jeans with some boots that, are tucked in, yeah.
exactly. So look a bit like, sort of a Bowden catalogue, sort of attractive yet homely. And I put on my chunky knits and I did look good. But
if only you had a bar jacket.
No, I didn't. Luckily I didn't, don't you worry. So we went up on the hill over Oxford and we basically stood in this field watching fireworks, and it actually felt a bit like, we were, I don't know, involved in some sort of illegal or illicit activity, because we're basically just like up to our knees in mud, watching in the distance while other people had fun. But, so then we ate some toffee apples, we did all this sort of thing. I was still wearing my chunky knits, but at no point was there any reference made whatsoever to what this was actually about. It was just almost the phrase bonfire night as opposed to Guy Fawkes night is really important. People don't care what it's about. But is that okay? I just think, because actually this is something about anti-Catholicism. It's it's a Linda Colley sort of esque exercise in building Britishness through rejecting Catholicism, and actually a way that should remind us of our history of oppression, our history of violence. So this forgetting of violence, forgetting actually of how nasty the history of violence is, I'm not sure if it's okay.
I don't think anybody's remembering the 5th of November. No.
Exactly.
But,
remembering.
But you bring up something, when you talk about the illicitness of standing in your chunky knits on the muddy hill. I was talking to some of our students last night, and they were saying that they spent the night running around, they went over to see the bonfire was a bit boring. They ran around, then they spent the night running around campus trying to sort of see which buildings they could get into, and sort of this illicit trespass. It was a night of trespass and slight the transgression of borders and boundaries and norms. And I wonder if what we're getting is a folding in, as we're forgetting the kind of religious and nation-building processes that underpinned Guy Fawkes. We're folding in bonfire into Halloween and the kind of, the liminal, that porous border between worlds that Halloween used to represent. Are you with me, Erika? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, and I am actually with you as well, because standing in a field in Oxford, outside Oxford, the only other people probably who were there were doggers, right? So we were definitely part of this illicitness, we're part of a culture on the margins.
Can I just say, for our listeners, that I thought you said joggers, and then I realised that you hadn't said joggers. You'd said something else.
Sorry, maybe I did say joggers. But maybe that's the fun of it, going out at night into fields. People don't really do it. And so maybe it is sort of gives us a means of participating in some sort of transgression. Maybe you're right. But the Halloween is interesting here, okay? Because Halloween is an Irish festival, right? And in Ireland, it comes from this sort of ancient Irish customs of celebrating the spirits and celebrating autumn and these sorts of things. And it was exported to America. And the Halloween we're now getting elided with Guy Fawkes Night is an American Halloween re-imported back east. So why did Halloween never come to England with the millions upon millions of Irish people who moved here? So in a way, that's a forgotten past as well, because it must have, is the answer. But for some reason it died out, and now it's being reignited through sort of the recolonisation of British culture through America. It's actually a very interesting process.
I mean, is there a kind of high and low culture question here, in that the Church of England has always celebrated All Souls' Day and All Saints' Day? Or has it always? Or is that a recent... I think that might be a post-Newmanite. In fact, I think that's right. I think John Henry Newman... It's only after John Henry Newman that All Saints and All Souls Days is celebrated within the kind of structure of the Church of England year. Right? This kind of neo-Catholic movement that Newman instigates in the Church of England before, of course, he goes and joins the other side and, goes to set up that, failed university in outside Dublin. But what we've got now is this a reimportation of the bodily practices around transgression.
Right.
Of kind of consumption. It's a consumption... it's a commodification, really, of transgression.
Yeah, You're probably right. So I think a lot of people are complaining about the shift from Guy Fawkes to Halloween.
You mean we're not innovative here? This is no deep insight. We haven't come up with something.
I think we're giving a much smarter reading than most people, actually. And I have to say, in Leicester, they allied another aspect, and they had Diwali fireworks. They team it up with the Guy Fawkes fireworks. We have the fireworks on the same night, which is even better. You get all these different readings going on, and actually, I think. Okay, your listeners could tweet in if they don't like this, they think they're wrong, and they think I'm wrong. But I think the less said about Guy Fawkes, the better. I think Guy Fawkes having Halloween is a good thing.
You think? That's. I mean, given what you were saying about Catholicism and the forgetting of the referent, for Guy Fawkes, how interesting that Diwali is put alongside, right? This kind of multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multi-culti Britain. Oh, Leicester, chunky knit Leicester. Yeah, I mean, there's a real cognitive dissonance there, isn't there?
Exactly. But I can't unpack it. It seems to work for the people of Leicester. You go to the fireworks display, and no matter what your reading of the fireworks, you take away your own reading of the fireworks display. It's not forced.
Ooh, but that is postmodernism. That's what it's done. There's no narrative.
Yeah, but it's fantastic. I think that's great.
Oh.
This is the type of society I want to live in.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, let us leave Erika Hanna for this week, and we'll look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Erika, not least for giving us a little bit of a breathing space so we can work out which buttons to press when. So back to the studio where live history is taking place. And we have Artemis. Now, Artemis, you're a Greek.
Do I have a mic?
Oh, you don't have a mic. Now you have a microphone.
Oh, great. Yes, I'm Greek.
Yay. And tell me where you're from in Greece.
I'm from Thessaloniki, which is the best part of Greece. That's northern Greece in Macedonia, Greek Macedonia.
I've actually been to Thessaloniki.
Oh, isn't it beautiful?
It was very beautiful. It had a kind of industrial outer ring, which one had to pass through.
It's a port city, so it was industrious at some point.
Is it not still industrious?
Well, Greece is not industrious at the moment, so Thessaloniki is not either.
So we're drawing a distinction here between industriousness, which is working hard, and industrial, which is the kind of so we'll align that small slippage. So you're from Thessaloniki?
Yeah.
Yep. And did you go to school there? You were born there?
Yeah, of course, all of it. And then I came to England. So I finished school there, and then I decided to come to England to study, which was a great choice, given what's going on now. So, I had the time to leave the country, get accustomed to this country, and now it's collapsing. So it's great timing, isn't it?
What do you think about all of that? I mean, the young people in Athens are on the streets yesterday as the Greek parliament is passing by a narrow majority this bailout bill.
It is very sad, but in my opinion, we had it coming, really.
Why do you say that?
We've had 30 years of prosperity, of money flowing in from Europe, and we didn't use it at all. We absorbed it and we just gave it all over the place. No industry, no tourism, nothing. So now we have to pay it back somehow, unfortunately. And
do you think that's a view that's widely shared amongst your generation?
Well, I know quite a few people who know that that's how things work. But, people my age want a future, and that's something I can understand. No one would like their future taken away, because that's what it is right now. There are no jobs. If we default, they will not be able to leave the country. There will be poverty. So I can understand what's going on, but I think that if we sober up and we see it clearly, maybe we'll be able to work it out somehow.
Yeah. I mean, that's a hopeful vision. When you read material on the current Greek situation, there's often a kind of reference to the past, particularly to the Second World War, and to although the period of the dictatorship is often kind of passed over. I mean, this is History Pitch, everyone, in case you're just like enjoying listening to our technical carnage today. But so how does this history, how is the story of the past and Greece's sort of turbulent 20th century retold in the present as part of these current crises?
Well, mainly we remember all the remunerations we're being owed, which is insane.
What do you mean? Because I learnt only recently that the Greek government, I think it was in 1930 or 1939, lent Germany, made a loan to Nazi Germany. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Well, apparently this is true. But when you're talking about reparations, what are you speaking of?
The deaths, and I think that the Germans came in and took all the gold from the National Bank of Greece back then. But I'm quite sure that national and international treaties were made after the end of the war. So I'm not quite sure which of this money we're actually entitled to be taking back. But that's a bit foggy in Greece right now, because there is loads of populism and political interests into feeding people with those ideas of nationalism, really. Because what do? For Greece, Germany is the enemy somehow. I don't know how that happened, but it's not the IMF, it's not the European Central Bank, it's not Europe, it's Germany. So we turned the Greeks against the Germans, and I don't really see the reason right now.
Well, I guess right now it's German and French banks that own most of Greek debt.
Yes, but they own the debt. It's not that they created the debt, or so yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting what you're saying about the fogginess of the way the past is sort of mobilised, and in a way, it's not helpful for it to be too specific or known. It's much more useful to political parties if there's a murkiness around it. Of
course, we now have our own Nazi party.
Yeah,
that's amazing, isn't it? We never had a past of absolutist regimes in Greece, and
except for the dictatorship.
Yeah, but that was a European phenomenon. That wasn't Greek. That was because of the crisis. We've had kings, and we abolished them like 3 or 4 times. After the Ottoman Empire, we've never had any absolutist regimes.
Yeah. I mean, at the same time as the myths and the stories about the Second World War are being mobilised, what you're drawing on there is this much longer Greek past. Do you think that is equally as foggy? And originally, I mean, when the first bailout was passed, we saw protesters in Athens referring to kind of Greek democracy, this ancient.
The Greek country is a very new country. We were established in 1830. So we don't even have 2 years of existence as a country, as a nation country. So what's for sure is that the Greek bloodline has been lost over the centuries, and that's common knowledge. Well, except for Greece, which to maintain this nation and this country later on had to draw on those nationalistic ideas of how we are the descendants of Socrates and Pericles and all those great people. Alexander the Great and everyone who did great things was actually Greek somehow. So yes, we need that. We've needed that since the creation of our country, and we still need that now. Well, we don't need that, but we use that to unify somehow, to create an identity for us, really. Yeah.
And how is your own family story placed within this kind of 20th century history?
Well, actually, my paternal grandfather, how do you say that? Paternal...
Your father's grandfather?
No,
your father's
parents,
father.
My paternal parents.
Yeah, your paternal grandfather.
Great, thank you. That's my Greekness. Came from the Black Sea. There was an exchange of population in 1922 after a war between Turkey and Greece. So they were there were Greek populations living there since the ancient years that with the exchange had to come back to Greece. And of course the Turks went back to Turks. Muslims really. So there were many Greek-speaking Muslims in Crete, let's say, and they had to leave too and go back to Turkey. And I was watching a documentary, and there were those old people, let's say 90 years old, so they're still alive, crying over how they had to leave their houses. So my grandparents were actually younger at that point. They were like 2 years old in 1922. So they didn't really leave that, but they still speak the idiom. No, the Greeks there didn't speak Turkish. They spoke an idiom of Greek, which I think derives from the ancient Greek, and it's actually closer to ancient Greek than modern Greek.
Right.
So they spoke that at home. My parents and I can understand it. Of course, we cannot speak it, but it's quite cute.
Is it?
That. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it a vocabulary?
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's the same and different at the same time. It's it's not just a different pronunciation. They have their words and their rhythm, and it's great actually.
Cool. I mean, I have a friend who's was doing a big project on dying languages, and trying to kind of capture these speakers before they go. And I wonder if there's similar projects around in Greece, although I guess the state money is.
Well, we have many people actually speaking those languages still. So I'm sure there are projects on that.
And so your mother's family?
My mother's family was from Greece.
From Thessaloniki?
No, they weren't from the city. They were from small villages. They were communists.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah, wave the red flag.
Yes.
Yeah.
So after the Second World War, after the civil war that happened in Greece.
Immediately after the Second World War.
Yes, immediately. Yeah. They had to leave Greece as communists, so they moved to the Czech Republic.
I mean, they survived the war. That's sort of remarkable.
I think that my grandparents were active during the war, and they were at the mountains, on the mountains. I don't know. Yeah, they were actually fighting, and then they fought the civil war.
Right. Yeah.
Which is sad, but yeah. And then they left the country. They had to leave, and they went to the Czech Republic, which was socialist, of course. And my mother was born there. She stayed there until she was 18. And then they came back when the borders opened. And it's really interesting because for the communists to come back to Greece, they had to have the approval of a relative that already lived in the country, so that there are no problems with
paying, like welfare?
With inheritance.
Oh, I see. Gosh.
When my grandparents came back, they had living family back, and if they didn't want them back, they wouldn't have been able to come back, which is tricky and unfair, but that's how it is.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting because, my mother grew up as a Czech, speaking Greek at home, of course, and she was always overwhelmed with the idea of coming back. She didn't even know what coming back was because she'd never lived there. She was born in the Czech Republic.
Yeah.
So her parents wanted to go back. That was the dream.
Right.
And they lived there for 40 years, 30 years. So that was their dream.
Yeah.
And so at some point when she was 18, they just took her and went back to Greece. And that was a new country for her. Yeah. She wasn't Greek, really.
But she must have, I mean, how interesting. She'd lived with this sort of shadow idea of this shadow country that she'd imagined into existence in its, frightening and, delightful iterations. But it was an imaginary land. And And then she arrived through no sort of...
it was a shock. It was a shock, I tell you, because socialist countries were really good at that point. They were really forward. compared to Greece.
Compared to Greece.
Of the 70s.
Yeah. So Greece in the 70s is a country ravaged by civil war and by the dictatorship.
Yes, and they came back after the dictatorship, of course. But the thing is that when she came back, they didn't have roads, really, and they didn't have toilet paper in the small villages and such things, which was really difficult for someone who had grown up in Europe to come back to a country thought as Western, which was actually Eastern in attitude. So it was a huge shock. And what they brought back was a piano and guns.
Wow, that is amazing.
That's actually how I got to play the piano. One day I was asking my mother, "Oh, Mama, how come I learned the piano and not something else?" And she was like, "Well, when we had to come back, we couldn't bring money with us, so we bought carpets, guns, and a piano."
Gosh.
Of course, the guns were sold like that.
Yeah.
And then we got the piano left. So that's how you learn the piano. I was like, oh, I'm so lucky. We could have bought a trombone or something.
It's not easy to haul a piano over large distances. We'll come back to Artemis in a minute. But I think if I can make this technology work, it's time to visit Simon Prince, who is our devil's advocate. And let me just see how this is going to work. Simon.
You fool.
And hello, Simon. Welcome back to the Devil's Advocate segment on History Pitch.
I'm delighted to be back.
It's lovely to have you. Now, as this year is the 50th anniversary of the Cuban Missile Crisis, this was the challenge I gave you last week. Defend the Soviets' actions in Cuba.
Well, first off, the Soviets, or Soviet historians, refer to it as the Caribbean crisis. It's an indication about it's a bigger project, it's a bigger problem, it's a bigger experience than this.
But they would, though, wouldn't they, Simon?
They would, though, wouldn't they? That's your response. I'm going to win this week. If that's how you're coming at me, that's how I'm going to win. So my big idea about this is that the Soviet Union is not the problem here. The problem is the United States and also China. Everyone, just like they forget about Dr. Dre, no, they forget about Dre, they also forget about China when discussing the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Nobody forgets about China anymore, and I put it to you, Simon, that what you are doing is taking a current global geopolitical powers and reading them back into a period in which actually China was not as important as you're making out.
China may not have been as strong, but China did have considerable clout, particularly in the Third World. So this growing split between Khrushchev and the Soviet Union on the one hand, and Mao and China on the other, about domestic policy. You know, Khrushchev was liberalising, Mao was pushing ahead with very Stalinist policies in a 5-year plan. This gap between them was being played out in the world as well. So China was presenting itself as the new leader of world revolution, and that's something that Khrushchev felt he had to respond to.
That strikes me as something that, America might need to defend itself against.
Well, I think America should have been aware that it was Khrushchev responding to China more globally, but also America was the reason why he was specifically intervening in Cuba, because the Americans had invaded Cuba in 1961, and the CIA had a plan to assassinate Castro. So it was a way of defending Cuba that the missiles were brought to Cuba.
So if you're saying, if I understand your argument, that actually it's the US that's the rogue state, not the Soviet Union, why then did Khrushchev keep this whole thing under wraps? Why did he keep it so secret?
I think what Khrushchev was trying to do was present America with a fait accompli. Instead of America kind of intervening at an earlier stage, you could say, the missiles, they're in Cuba now. What are you going to do about it?
And did they have to be nuclear? Did they have to be nuclear weapons? Did he have to kind of, if this is all about staging an international incident to shift the kind of political balance of power as opposed to the military balance of power, did he have to threaten the world with nuclear holocaust?
I think if it was just purely military, it was purely about defending Cuba, then there would have been an argument for just sending in troops, sending in Red Army troops, the Red Navy. But because he wants to make this international splash, I think that's why he has to put missiles in as well. So balancing out the problem of America and the problem of China, trying to deal with two problems at once. The missiles would be a way of holding back the Americans, but the extra splash it would give is a way of saying to the Chinese, and also to his critics within the Kremlin, we're back in play here, we're a major power.
I mean, but he sells out the Cubans, doesn't he? He's not actually in the interests of poor old Castro.
Well, Castro wanted them, and I mean, everyone goes on about Che Guevara being this fantastic guy and such a peaceful person. You just see him now on movies riding motorbikes around and helping lepers.
Also on T-shirts. Let's not kid.
Yeah, let's not forget the T-shirts. Yeah, but Castro and Che Guevara were willing to have a nuclear holocaust. They were willing to take it much further.
Are you really saying that the Cubans are responsible for the potential destruction of the world?
Well, I'm now no longer invited to Cuba, it seems. I'm banned from Cuba. But I'm saying that the Cuban leadership was more gung-ho than Khrushchev.
It doesn't turn out so well for them at the end, though, does it?
Well, yes and no, because, I mean, the impact of this is that the Americans have to make a deal. I mean, Khrushchev is quite peaceful about this. He doesn't want to take this to the edge of war. The Americans have to make a deal. The deal is that the missiles will be removed in exchange for a promise not to invade Cuba. And the Americans have kept that promise. They've done all kinds of other things, but they have not invaded Cuba in 50 years.
They've also, totally undermined its economy.
Well, you can also argue the Cubans have helped with that. But the American promise was not, we're not going to mess Cuba up. It was we're not going to invade Cuba. And they stuck to that. So the Cubans had that going for them. And also, Khrushchev got the nuclear missiles removed from Turkey. I mean, America had encircled the Soviet Union. America had nuclear weapons. America had nuclear weapons in Italy. America had nuclear weapons in Turkey. America had nuclear weapons in Britain. Poor Soviet Union encircled.
Poor Soviet Union. The nuclear weapons in Turkey and Italy were virtually redundant anyway, and the Soviet Union. I mean, this whole ploy is to get the US to give up West Berlin. This is all about Soviet expansion in Eastern Europe. No, it's not.
I mean, that's a horrible thing to say. The Soviet Union are not these aggressive people you're making out. These lovely romantic revolutionaries, and they went to Cuba. They met up with Castro, and they were taken back to their youth when they were young revolutionaries. They wanted to protect this wonderful revolution.
Yeah, like eating potatoes and drinking beetroot soup and, killing a few people in the forests now and then.
Well, not in Cuba. I mean, in Cuba, they would just like to go to Cuba, make movies, flirt with local women, and,
And that's what they were doing on the Berlin Wall as well?
Well, okay. Berlin is a different question.
Berlin's a different question.
The Soviet Union ultimately wanted for Germany to be a neutral, united country. The Americans are the ones who wrecked that. The Americans are the ones who divided Germany up. And the messing around that was going on in West Berlin, putting up all those signs saying West Berlin's free and making West Berlin this showcase for the West, it was problematic. I mean, Khrushchev had to deal with that.
He had to deal with it. He had no choice. I don't know.
He's being pushed into all this.
Pushed into a corner, a bit like you.
Nothing to do with the Caribbean crisis, though, which is to do with the Caribbean crisis is to do with America threatening a revolution, which is a spontaneous revolution, not being created by the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union weren't involved with it. Just a handful of people landed in the mountains, and they were able to inspire the people to overthrow an American-backed dictatorship and try and be good for the people.
And that's your final pitch?
Well, my final pitch as well would be that the Americans were also concerned about what Cuba was doing for their rights problem. I mean, when Castro turns up in New York in the 1960s to speak at the UN, he leaves the Shelbourne Hotel because of the racist staff. He goes to Harlem, stays in a hotel in Harlem, and the people of Harlem love it. He meets up with Malcolm X. He actually invites Khrushchev down as well. I mean, he really pushes this idea of America as a country where segregation exists, where racism exists. It's got no right for leadership in the world.
And you really think a tiny little island south of Miami and 40 nuclear warheads, weapons, what were they? Missiles, is really going to threaten the United States?
Well, I think what was threatening the United States was what Cuba stood for, what the revolution stood for. And that was threatening to America domestically with the civil rights movement, and it was also threatening internationally with a struggle to win the Third World, either between the Americans or the Soviets and the Chinese. So I think it was the ideas of the Cuban Revolution, which was the threat. In terms of the nuclear missiles, of course the nuclear missiles will potentially affect America. Before the American Air Force could bomb the Soviet Union back into the Stone Age, those missiles could have taken out Miami, those missiles could have taken out, say, Baltimore or something, which would have been a terrible loss to the United States.
So ideas, not bombs. Who do you think wins this week?
I win easily. I think you've been blown out of the water. I think this is a convincing victory for the revolution.
Blown out of the water by... Blown out by a nuclear warhead. Right.
No, blown out by ideas.
So, Simon, I'll give you that one.
Oh, how generous.
Yeah, I mean, we need to keep this even. But next week I'm going to take you down because I want you to defend the Versailles Treaty.
Right. Okay.
Back to Western Europe.
So I'm back defending imperialism.
Yep. Well, you've been doing it all day today.
I was defending the plucky Cuban people and the fact that the brave revolutionaries of Russia wanted to support them.
On that cliche, ladies and gentlemen, let us say goodbye to Simon.
I'm going to go away and sing Internationale. Take care.
But now, intruding into History Pitch is the itinerant poetry librarian. And she is a fascinating creature who I hope we'll get to see a lot more of in the weeks to come. She has a website, which I might tell you about. It's www.tipl, the itinerant poetry librarian.info, and you can tweet her at Librarian. So let's see now if I can recover her. Okay.
Hello, I'm the itinerant poetry librarian, and I'm delighted to welcome today a valued patron of our library, a.k.a.
Cayetana. Hi, librarian. Nice to see you again.
Welcome, VPL.
What's that stand for?
It's valued patron of the library for short, VPL.
Oh, excellent. It's good to see you again. Last time I saw you was at UCL.
Yes, we were at University College London, opening up as part of the Scandinavian Studies Department Strindberg celebrations. We were in the Red Room.
Yes, it was very nicely decorated, very nicely themed.
And I believe that day you did take out and borrow and hopefully read several items from our collection.
Yes, I was able to spend a great time at the Red Room, just sitting down, reading some books, and one of the ones that stayed on my mind was a small handcrafted book by Hazel Pine.
Hazel Pine, yes. Also a valued patron of the library, but originally she donated this item to the library in Seattle, Washington in 2007, if my memory strikes me as correct.
Yes,
we can check,
right.
in fact, because inside every item that is donated to the library, we make a little notation of the geographic location. So looking now, it does say donated in Seattle, August 2007.
Yes.
And can we ask, what did you like, apart from the physical appearance of this?
I enjoyed that it was a diary written. It was 3 little short stories, very relatable, very humane, very individual, of relating just day-to-day things that...
So quite personal and intimate.
Yes, definitely. And, I mean, a lot of what attracted me to your library especially, your collection, was that many were handmade, beautifully crafted books made out of card, hand-binded, illustrated. I mean, the book is...
We do have some items that are, as you are thus referring, although not all items are so beautifully manifest, unfortunately. However, our special collection is lost and forgotten poetry. So often these things do come in such beautiful, wonderful containers.
So where am I to find you next?
Indeed, a good question, valued patron, and a very important one, in fact, for those who, A, want to join, and B, have already joined and want to catch us again. As being an itinerant poetry library, we do move around rather a lot.
How many places?
Well, at the minute, I think we're up to 13 countries, and probably about 200 different locations, give or take a few.
Excellent. May I ask what your most memorable location has been?
Memorable's difficult, but we can give you some examples of potentially interesting places, such as Forest Hill Cemetery in Boston in Massachusetts, which was a little bit of a slow library and mainly attended by geese. However, we've also opened on a boat in a loch, and we particularly enjoyed opening up in a ranger's hut on Achmelvik Beach in the Highlands.
So where next, librarian?
Next up, in fact, is Edinburgh. We're going to be opening for the good citizens of Edinburgh at the end of November, courtesy of the Westport Book Festival. and we will be opening up in different venues across the city. And we will provide library services for you. As part of our itinerant poetry library services, we are in fact dedicated to getting the information out there about the amazing resource that libraries and archives are. And as part of that, every week we're going to give you a bit of a tip about what archive resources and libraries might be accessible to you. Library Lowdown of the Week. Exactly, and in our Library Lowdown of the Week, we're going to give you a little bit of information. So this week's bit of information is about Westminster Library Services, Westminster Reference and Information Library Services. And did you know that they have a special collection of Sherlock Holmes material?
No, I did not. That sounds very interesting. Is it accessible to all?
It is accessible to all, except you do have to ring up and make an appointment first to join, because it's not a walk-in off-the-street collection, unlike our own. However, they also do have some brilliant, completely walking off the street as a member of the public library and take a look at the collection of materials. Two other types of stuff. They've got a performing arts library. They are a specialist in that, and so they've got lots of information about theatre and dance and various other bits and pieces.
Very interested in that.
And then also they have a kind of a public information unit available there too for more information about legal reports, statutory legislation by the government, etc. They've got all of that. Do go along and join Westminster Public Libraries.
Thank you for the information, Librarian.
And we hope to see you there. A little bit of a fact of history as well. On the top of Westminster Library is Newton's Observatory. Still there, boys and girls. Although it'll be a lucky librarian you meet who will take you up to check it out.
And that was the itinerant poetry librarian. I think we'll be looking forward to hearing from her and her customers. She roams around, and if you want to find out where she is, you can get her on Twitter @librarian or www.tipl.info. Back to the studio, Tavinder. Tavinder is going to be doing Beard or Babe. So what is it this week, Tavinder?
Hi, Tamson. Today we have a beard, and a lovely beard at that. We've got Tsar Nicholas II of Russia, or to give him his proper title, Nicholas II, Emperor and Autocrat of all the Russians.
All the Russians, with luscious locks.
Yes, luscious. Although he doesn't have much hair on his actual head, he has plenty of beard and tash hair, which is quite appropriate for this month as we are celebrating Movember.
We are indeed. Do you think he'd raise a good amount of money?
Oh, he would. With his tash, he definitely would. He's got a lovely, sumptuous tash.
So tell us about Tsar Nicholas.
So Tsar Nicholas was the last Romanov Tsar of the Russian Emperor, as quite famously he was overthrown by the people and then hijacked by the Bolsheviks.
Hijacked by the Bolsheviks.
Yes, taken to some remote Siberian location and shot.
Yes, not a nice end.
No,
not a
not
nice
at all.
end. His tash didn't save him.
No, sadly,
But
no.
he famously shared a tash, or he looked very much like his cousin.
He did. He looked very much like his English cousin, George. Was he the fourth or the fifth?
Oh, gosh, don't know that. That's like proper history. Do you think we do that?
Proper
here?
history, oh dear. Well, King George, he looked very much like him.
Now, what else do you have to tell us about Nicholas?
Well, so Nicholas tried to put in some reforms to, appease the people, but he's quite famously known as for being weak and listening to his wife too much, which is quite sad, rather, because, he wasn't that bad.
But you've done it again. You've put a babe in. Behind the beard.
I have. I can't stop doing this.
No, it's good.
But I've actually got a modern-day comparison for Tsar Nicholas. So, you may have heard about the situation in Jordan with King Abdullah II, who's trying to do similar things to what Nicholas did back in Russia, and trying to put in some reforms and trying to stop the Arab Spring coming to Jordan. But right now, he seems to be failing miserably.
Well, yes. I mean, we could also talk about Syria.
Yeah.
Does King Abdullah have a tash?
No, he doesn't. Sadly, no. King Abdullah is incredibly clean-shaven. Sad. Shame on you, King Abdullah. Grow a tash.
Maybe things will work out better for him.
Yeah, if he grows a tash, people love him no more.
For his people.
Yeah. There's tons of reports of all these, extremist Muslim terrorists going from Jordan and, making their bombs and things and going to Syria to explode them, and King Abdullah doesn't seem to be doing very much about them. So it's interesting. He's trying to appease them and appease the liberals at the same time.
Well, he's stuck in the middle.
He is. He's a bit like poor Nicholas.
Poor Nicholas. I don't think many people would call Nicholas poor Nicholas, although the West did. Yeah. That was a really, really whistle-stop tour through the last days of the Romanov Empire, because we've got 4 minutes to go. And I think we can fit in maybe 2 questions.
Oh, we can fit in
2 questions. This is a recently renovated segment, which is now called How British is Tamson? So, Tavinder, what do you have for me? I have to sit the Life in the UK citizenship test. I'm probably going to fail it, but with your help.
I'm going to start with a rather easy question, which they seem to be thinking is very important. So, some people speak with a Cockney accent where?
Oh, my gosh. In London?
Absolutely correct.
Woohoo!
You're going to get this test all right.
Is that really a question?
That's really a question. Along with the 14th of February celebrates what? Yeah, they don't really...
St. Valentine? The Feast of St. Valentine?
The Feast of St. Valentine. You give them even more than they want.
What do they...
They just say Valentine's Day.
Okay, come on. Give me one that's hard.
Yeah, let's find a good one. So, in UK, electricity is supplied at what? A, 90 volts, B, 220 volts, C, 240 volts, or D, 360 volts?
Are you serious? Is that really a question?
That's really a question.
My hairdryer, what does it have on it? 240.
Oh, absolutely right.
Woohoo!
You're on a roll here.
Okay.
On a roll.
So far I'm British enough.
You are British enough. Well, today, we've established Tamsin is indeed British enough.
So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for sticking with us through all our troubles. We hope to improve. We're not actually here next week because it's reading week at... it's effective learning week, where you go away and learn effectively as opposed to what you do the rest of the year here at Brunel.
Or you catch up on some much-needed sleep.
Yeah, or download our podcasts and
yes,
listen to them back to back.
All 2 of them.
All 2 of them. But we will be back the following week, which is, I think, the 22nd of November. And I'm sure you'll all be hanging out to hear me and my regular team mates, Tavinder, Artemis, Simon, Erika, and the itinerant poetry librarian, back talking history on History Pitch. But for now, it's goodbye.